Your psychological well-being is not dictated by the absence of stress or anxiety. It's your capacity to move through it. It's how efficiently you can move through it. The issue is when you get stuck in it. And so
Mm,
many people get stuck in it, but because they're not necessarily aware that they're experiencing it, or they get stuck in it because they resist it. They get stuck in it because they utilize, say, unhealthy coping strategies that keep the stress or the anxiety stuck. And therefore, they're constantly living in that hypervigilant state, right? And so, what's so vital for people to be able to understand and work on each and every day, and I work on it each and every day. I'm not perfect. It's a daily practice. Is
Hi, I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and this is Well, Hello Anxiety. In a world that often moves too fast, we're here to pause, breathe, and understand anxiety together. Each episode will explore practical strategies, share honest conversations, and uncover the science behind anxiety and well-being, all while creating a space where it's okay to not be okay. Let's continue this journey together. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for sharing some of your time with me here today and my very special guest who is a regular on the podcast. You all really enjoy her episodes, and so I have invited back the wonderful Harriet Iles. And what I can tell you is that I think this conversation in particular is going to really speak straight to the hearts of so many of you listening, because I know when I talk to a lot of people, they just want to get rid of their anxiety. They really just feel like, I just need this to go, and then I can live my life and I can do all the things that are on my heart, in my head, and the things that I really know will help make life feel more fulfilling and purposeful. And some of you also will talk to me about how it shows up at times that are really inconvenient, which is of course because anxiety shows up around the things that we care about. So I've invited Harriet back because I love her very gentle, very warm, very measured, and very experienced. Wise is the word I'm looking for. You're so young, Harriet, and yet so wise. And we're going to talk today about befriending anxiety rather than battling it, because it is the struggle with anxiety that can just drive it to be more of a problem for us. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you'll know Harriet joined us for Understanding Eating Disorders, which was episode 106, and episode 175, which was ever so popular, Taming a Worried Mind. Harriet is a psychologist. She is founder of Restorative Space Psychology in Sydney, but also works online. Her mission is to empower people to manage anxiety, worry, and overthinking with greater self-belief, more calm, and more courage. And I love her approach because it's collaborative. You'll see her on her socials. You'll get to know her as a really calm, measured, as I said before, wise, lovely therapist. And so if you're looking for somebody to work with, have a look, because you'll get to know more about Harriet just by having a look online, which I think is really important, because the connection with a psychologist is ever so important for the therapeutic outcomes. Harriet is, of course, so passionate about helping people to really thrive and be able to manage their anxiety, and to be able to also understand more about their nervous system. So that's enough from me. So a huge welcome, Harriet. Thank you so much for joining us here again on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me again. It's amazing to be back and flesh out more about anxiety and how to befriend anxiety for our own well-being.
It's so important. And I feel like that's something that I was ultimately able to do. And I often think about the title of this podcast, and I'll joke that it's like, well, hello anxiety, here we are again, another day together. What are we doing together today? And I'm curious to know, how do you describe befriending anxiety? Because there might be some listeners who are thinking, are you kidding me? I can't stand this anxiety, and I don't want to be friends with this anxiety, and I'm not quite sort of following how this is going to be helpful for me.
Totally, totally. I mean, I think the key thing around this notion of befriending anxiety is understanding what anxiety is, what the symptoms of anxiety look like, and what anxiety is trying to tell us. And so this notion of, I guess, befriending, and we'll flesh that out a little bit more, I think, in today's episode. But this notion of befriending is really about understanding what anxiety is, how it shows up in our body as well as in our mind, listening in, leaning in, and learning how to respond to it, almost like that sort of little child or whatever you want to, however you want to see it, but learning how to respond to it, and leaning in with that curiosity and that kindness and that compassion, and finding ways to move through anxiety. With that curiosity and that compassion, but seeing that anxiety like a messenger, it's trying to tell us something, like a signal, and responding to it. And I guess building as well our capacity and our confidence to respond to it so we don't fear it as much. Because what I see a lot of is people getting anxious about their anxiety, which obviously leads to more anxiety in the body and the mind. So through
Yes.
befriending, we soften it and we build up our capacity to engage with it differently so that we don't have all these emotions about the emotion.
Yes, which can often lead to just a spiral and ultimately panic, can't
Yeah.
it? I love the way that you describe that because it feels so, I think about my anxiety, how it used to be and how overwhelming it would feel and how frightening that feeling would be because I didn't understand it and I didn't like it. It can make us feel so uncomfortable and overwhelmed, and it can interfere with the way that we can think and process what's happening in the moment. And I knew that when I used to see my psychologist, he would say it's only anxiety, but not in a flippant, dismissive kind of don't worry about it kind of way. He was helping me to arrive ultimately at that place where my relationship with it would change. And that was transformative, which is why I love that we're talking about this today because, it's so transformative when you can sit and you can say, this is what I'm feeling. You start to notice you've got that curiosity like you talked about. You start to kind of think, well, what is this feeling that's coming? Where am I noticing it in my body? And in that moment, and as you develop those skills and that capacity and tolerate the discomfort that can come with it, and you eventually start to kind of not welcome it, but just know that it's just sometimes a part of your experience. It's something that you have to experience to kind of know the difference it makes, but it can be really hard, can't it, for people to kind of get from that point where anxiety feels like it's overtaking life and is just really like the stop sign at every turn to being able to welcome it, be accepting of it, even though you might not like it. So how do you help people to kind of start to embrace even the idea of befriending their anxiety?
I guess initially through that psychoeducation, so helping people to understand what anxiety is or how it can be perceived. So I guess seeing anxiety as an emotion, and it's this sort of natural response to perceived threats in our environment, to say uncertainty, feeling out of control, a lack of information, possibility can bring about anxiety, right? And I guess it's the body's way of in a way signaling something important needs attention or say preparation, right? I mean, we can contrast anxiety with fear being that almost like immediate sort of, well, it's in a response to this sort of immediate danger, whereas anxiety is a little bit more kind of future focused and often tied to the what ifs, the worst case, this sort of anticipation, this sort of future oriented future oriented thoughts can be part of anxiety. So yeah, I guess it's firstly just helping people to understand what anxiety is and what it may be signaling and the different symptoms we can experience. So like the physical sensations, muscle tension, restlessness, stomach discomfort, the cognitive aspects, the worrying, the overthinking, the impaired concentration, the emotional experience, that nervousness or unease, as well as things that you can do when you're anxious, like avoid things, seek reassurance, excessively prepare for things, or even like procrastinate. So I guess it's firstly getting people to build that sense of mindfulness, that self-awareness around their common symptoms of anxiety and what anxiety is actually about, that it's not a flaw or a defect. It's not trying to hurt us. It's trying to communicate something to us. And when we learn to see anxiety as not an enemy, but more so an overprotective part or a friend, or however you want to see it, like an inner child. Some people like talking about anxiety like this very kind of overactive inner child that's constantly aware of the environment, almost hyper aware of the environment that's trying to actually protect them.
Yes.
When you realize that's anxiety's intention, we can lean in with more curiosity, more compassion. So I think I've given you a long-winded answer there, but it's really giving people the education and knowledge around what anxiety is actually trying to do here
It
and how
is.
it's showing up.
Yeah, and I appreciate you taking the time with the explanation, and it got me thinking, I was at the osteo this week because I've had a pain in my rhomboid, my shoulder blade, and I noticed a signal from my body. It was uncomfortable. It was a message to me that, okay, something needs attention. And then I went and sought attention for it. But it's not frightening because I have an understanding of it. I know that that's what that message is telling me. And so the more we can help people to understand that anxiety is a messenger and to think about it through that lens, it makes sense that when we do, we're willing to turn around and say, well, hello, anxiety, and have a look. Let's have a look at you. Let's actually have a look at you rather than all of the running away and trying to ignore it or stuff it down or busy ourselves or just having all of the experiences that anxiety is bringing for us, but not really paying attention to it closely. It feels frightening sometimes to stop running, to turn around and literally have a little bit of a look at it and understand it a bit more. But it really is such a powerful kind of gateway, isn't it, for those of us that live with an anxiety disorder. Obviously, we of course know that anxiety is very normal and comes and goes with stressful situations and settles down afterwards. But yeah, that willingness, we need to sort of develop that willingness, don't we, to sort of stop and turn around and have a little bit of a look. And that takes a little bit of courage, and it takes some support too, doesn't it?
Definitely, definitely, it takes courage, and it is great to have the support of friends, family, and professionals to give you that extra layer of support too. But yes, it is about learning how to slow down, lean in, build that mindfulness, be that interested observer, and really validate that it is hard, it is uncomfortable. And I guess once we're actually able to validate, hold space, that's when we can start to really lean in with some more kindness to ourselves and go, okay, what is anxiety trying to tell me? Like, is it midnight and I'm suddenly feeling really, really anxious and anxiety's diverting me down a different path home, and that's obviously incredibly helpful. Thank you, anxiety. Is it I'm stepping into a new role at work and I'm feeling anxious, and that anxiety is telling me this is novel, this is new, right? But that's not necessarily a reason to avoid. It's just to lean in with kindness and go, yes, this is novel, this is new. And anything that's unfamiliar, anything that's a little bit uncertain, that feels a bit out of our control, where we don't have all the information, that is probably going to bring about some of those nerves, a little bit of that anxiety. Because if we tie it back to survival, our survival needs, things that were uncertain when we felt out of control, when we didn't have the information, when things weren't predictable, it could potentially jeopardize our survival. Hence why those things in the modern day can bring about those emotions. And we have to learn how to tolerate uncertainty, let go of what we can't control, bring ourselves back into the moment, focus on what we can control. and accept we don't always have the information, all the information. That's okay.
No, that's right. And that's where life can really open up, is where we don't know what's going to happen. And, gosh, if we knew every moment of every day, we knew exactly what to expect and what was going to happen, we wouldn't be too happy about that either, really. I mean, sometimes when you're anxious, you just want to say, am I going to get the job? Or, am I going to be successful? Or am I going to do this thing and do it with skill and confidence rather than embarrassing myself? We do want to know. But we also know, of course, that the only way we build skill and confidence is through doing. And gosh, I was reflecting, I'm approaching 200 episodes of the podcast, Harriet, and I've spoken before on the podcast about, when you're parenting an anxious child and the child doesn't have a willingness to kind of come on that journey of learning more about their anxiety or developing the mindfulness skills and the skills to help manage their anxiety in pursuit of a particular goal, because the goal is the parent's goal. It's not the child's goal. It's not important to the child. It's important to the parent. And so it's really helpful for us to talk now about when it comes to the willingness to turn around and look at the anxiety, be curious about it, understand more about it, learn and develop the skills to be able to be more mindful, calm the nervous system and settle, but also step forward to do something that is uncertain, bringing some anxiety with you. It really needs to be important enough for us to have the willingness to do that, doesn't it? And that comes down to values.
Yes, you make such a good point there. And I was actually, before you said the word value, going to dive into talking about value.
Good.
When you mentioned that, I was like, oh, she's reading my mind. But yes, I think when it comes to managing anxiety, let's just say we want to do something that is a little bit outside our comfort zone. But there is that part of us that wants to do it, helping someone to really reconnect to why they want to do it, to their purpose, to their values. So their values being like their moral compass that guides their actions, their values being the things that really matter to them. So helping someone to understand that, yes, you might feel a little bit of anxiety, but that this action aligns with your values, your purpose, your meaning, your intention. And that's more important. And then equipping them also with that psychoeducation around what anxiety is, as well as tools in that moment and ongoing to manage their anxiety and support their nervous system, the regulation of, say, their nervous system. So I'd be looking at tools around, say, like breath work, grounding, engaging an individual with their senses, so soothing through the senses, such as through like music, objects to help to ground them. So equipping them with tools to help them to manage those physical symptoms of anxiety. We might also look at things for their mind, so tools to manage the worry, tools to manage the what ifs, the worst case scenarios, the warning signs. They're another word for worry. So looking at some kind of rescripting or reframing or compassionate self-talk, as well as educating them around just what lifestyle practices will help to support their general kind of physiology on a day-to-day, which can support them to more efficiently kind of move through their anxiety. So we might also look at time in nature, exercise, nutritious, regular food intake and things like that as well, and sleep. So that's a very, very broad kind of
Yes.
response. There's lots and lots of different things, and I think we could unpack each one of those in a whole episode. But I guess when it comes to supporting someone to take those steps and to stretch their comfort zone, we're looking at, yes, values, meaning, intention, purpose, the rationale for why they're doing what they're doing. And we're looking at short and longer term strategies to support their anxiety, as well as just their nervous system.
The fact that you've talked about the short and longer term strategies, it's so important, because we look for the tools, we look for what can help in the moment, and there are many, and we can talk about those. But we cannot overlook the importance of the lifestyle choices that we make, and they are choices. For the most part. I mean, if you're a new mum listening and you're not getting good sleep, hey, I hear that is not a choice. That is a responsibility at the moment to be waking regularly for your little one. And of course, life can get in the way. Please know I understand that. But on the whole, when it comes to managing our anxiety and really maximizing our physical and mental health and living a lifestyle that supports us to be better placed for emotional regulation, for clear thinking, and be able to not only manage our anxiety, but live the best life we can to support ourselves in terms of our longevity and health span.
Mm-hmm.
We can't overlook it. And I know, with me, it's always been exercise. And I never knew, Harriet, because I didn't have a diagnosis until I was in my mid-20s, and I lived with an anxiety disorder for so long. It just so happened that I played a really high level of netball. I was constantly moving. I loved exercise in the gym. And so I can see now that there was a lot that supported me, even though I didn't know that that was what I was doing for my mental health back then. And I have to really fiercely protect my sleep. I stopped drinking about 18 months ago. Wasn't a huge drinker, but I'd, love a G&T on a Friday night or a glass of wine or two at dinner with friends and the like, and it affected my sleep. So I made a decision to let that go as part of my lifestyle. And the cumulative effect of these decisions is really powerful. I wonder, out of the things that you mentioned in terms of exercise and sleep and time in nature and nutrition, would you be happy to choose one of those to dive into a little bit deeper and share a little bit more about kind of why it's important for these kind of longer term strategies to be really thought through and acted upon?
Yes, I will. I think, I'll talk about sort of three pillars to my own well-being that I like to integrate into my routine. And so in a way, I'm actually probably unpacking a couple of them there. But
Yes.
I will focus on this and invite people to start to think about ways to potentially integrate some of this into their routine. I think routine, just on another side note, routine can be incredibly helpful for managing our day-to-day stress and anxiety because routine provides that element of predictability, that consistency and stability. And in a world where so much is out of our control, where we don't have a lot of information, where things are uncertain, where we're navigating different work pressures on a day-to-day, if we can create an element of consistency in terms of, what we do in the mornings and say what we do in the evenings, that can help us to tolerate the day-to-day, midday challenges that will obviously occur in our world and help us to more effectively move through stress and emotion. And I think one of the key things here is these different practices that I'll talk about may really help set us up to be able to move through emotion more effectively. Now, people say to me, "Oh, I just want to not feel things. I don't want to be anxious. I don't want to be that, and whatnot." And I say to them, your psychological well-being is not dictated by the absence of stress or anxiety. It's how efficiently you can move through it. Can you flexibly, is your nervous system flexible? Can you go, oh, that's anxiety. Okay, ground. Yeah, cool, deep breathe. Let's move through.
I'm
Right?
going to stop you there because I want you to repeat that. That is so important.
That's probably the key. That's probably the magic that everyone needs to know in the world. Your psychological well-being is not dictated by the absence of stress or anxiety. It's your capacity to move through it. It's how efficiently you can move through it. The issue is when you get stuck in it. And so
Mm.
many people get stuck in it, but because they're not necessarily aware that they're experiencing it, or they get stuck in it because they resist it. They get stuck in it because they utilize, say, unhealthy coping strategies that keep the stress or the anxiety stuck. And therefore, they're constantly living in that hypervigilant state, right? And so, what's so vital for people to be able to understand and work on each and every day, and I work on it each and every day. I'm not perfect. It's a daily practice, is constantly being attuned to oneself to start to notice those first signs and go, okay, what do I need right now? How can I
Mm,
move through this anxiety? How can I move through this stress more efficiently to come back into our calm state? And we go in
mm,
and out of stress responses and emotions all day, every day. So, in terms of the three pillars for my own well-being, and this is definitely something that other people can, if it works for them, can also take on, is movement. So, mindful movement, nature, and social connection. And I recognize I don't have lots of other responsibilities in the morning other than myself, but those are the three pillars to my well-being and in my routine.
mm,
So movement could be a fitness class, it could be a walk, it could be a run. Social connection is usually with my community down by the beach. Nature obviously is outside, park. I live in Sydney, so I've got Bondi Beach next door. I'm very, very fortunate. I've got the harbour and things like that. So being able to just be outside, get that vitamin D, get that sunlight, potentially see a sunrise, to do that, to be surrounded by people that I feel safe around, plus moving my body, that is so grounding.
mm.
And so, of course, not every day could look like this beautiful sunrise, running with 10 of your closest friends and being out in nature in that way. But I guess it's saying to myself, how can I get a little bit of each one of those before I see my first client, before I do my podcast, before I go into a meeting? And that's going to help ground and set me up for my day. And then in the evening, that could be going out for just a quick walk, a sauna, a podcast, dinner with a friend. So, as I said, I've got probably a little bit more flexibility than most people in their routine and their day to day, but they're some real key pillars that I try and incorporate and that sort of form the foundation for my routine.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing those. I think of it as bookends. But yeah, the morning we've got more control, more predictability if we have a routine. And if we know and understand just how important these experiences are for us to build a more psychologically flexible response to the challenges of the day and our ability to move through stress and anxiety and those emotions that are, uncomfortable, the ones that we don't really love to hang around for too long. So I think even just for you as a listener to think, are you like I often think about my day. I'm just running from one thing to the next. From the time I'm up, getting ready, sharing the bathroom, getting food, having breakfast, thinking about who's going where, and an extra 15 minutes in the morning could make all the difference, just to be a little bit more reflective, or just to give yourself a little bit of space to do something to ground and prepare for the day, and then at the other end of the day as well. Not to mention the various strategies that can be used throughout the day as well. Maybe you don't have access to being able to get outside too much, but there are a lot of those sort of short-term strategies that we've talked about before and we'll talk about again. So, Harriet, thank you so much for this. This has just been such a great conversation, and I can't wait to pick up again and share more with our lovely listeners next week. So thanks so much for joining us for this episode, Harriet. It's just been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing this time with me on Well, Hello Anxiety. Remember, understanding anxiety is the first step to managing it. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Take things one moment at a time. Focus on what you can control and know that you are not alone on this journey. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and I'll meet you right back here next week.